All right. Thank you all for being here today. The purpose of this press conference is to discuss the first year of our drug enforcement unit. So I'm going to give a little bit of a historical background, speak on the drug enforcement unit, and then allow Sheriff Lewis and Chairman Matt Hamby of Greer Police Department to make some comments, and then our commander, Bart McIntyre, will then go over a couple of cases and educate the public on what the drug enforcement unit has been actively doing. As you may remember, about a year and a half ago, sheriffs and chiefs in my office got together trying to figure out how to take on one of the most horrific and difficult crimes to prosecute in this county, and that is drug trafficking crimes. And we all realized that the impact that drug trafficking has on our communities is so expansive. It bleeds into all aspects of life. Drug trafficking creates violence among drug traffickers. It creates addiction among individuals and posing health risks in our community. And it bleeds into our children as well. So we got together to figure out what are we going to do? How are we going to take this on? And we realized we needed a unit, a self-contained unit of municipalities, sheriff's office, solicitor's office, all together in one location, and start taking on these drug dealers in our communities. Drug trafficking was at an all-time high at that point. We knew this because prices were low of the majority of drug crimes. And so we came together for a common goal and a common good, and we established a drug enforcement unit contained of sheriff's deputies, solicitor's office, and municipality investigators to take on drug dealers. As a result of that, a year later, here we are. And the drug enforcement unit has been better than we even ever imagined. It has gone forward doing amazing work, fantastic investigations, identifying some of the biggest and worst drug traffickers in our area and investigating them, arresting them, and they are now in our office, in the solicitor's office, where we are prosecuting them as well. Just so you know, there are about 35 members total in the drug enforcement unit. They have seized hundreds and hundreds of pounds of drugs, thousands of dollars in drug proceeds, and have arrested over 135 people in 1 year. So the work that they're doing is quite impressive, and it is having a major impact on our communities that we are seeing as well. So I really just want to let these guys talk about the first year of our drug enforcement unit, its successes, and you'll hear from everyone here about that. And then once we're done, we're happy to take any questions that that y'all may ask about the drug enforcement unit, and we can go from there. All right, Sheriff.
Thank you, Walt. Thank y'all for being here. I think this is certainly a testament to all of our municipalities in the county being able to work together. When you talk about a task force and the work they do, a lot of times you don't see the fruits of that, or the public doesn't get to see it. This is one opportunity where we're at a point after that first year and a half or so to reveal some of that information and really brag on the work those investigators have done, as well as the commander, Bart McIntyre, who you'll hear from directly. But a lot of these have been long-term investigations, and a lot of them have led from tips from the public. So if you're watching this today and you got some information in the area that you live in, please call and give it to us and let us follow up on it. Again, this is a multi-jurisdictional task force. So every county council, the county council has city council members, mayors have all bought into this, again, about a year and a half ago, and fostered this idea to make this happen. And this proves it works, and it's very beneficial to our young people in the community who are most affected, certainly by drug use and abuse. And I think today that people will be really surprised to see the work they've done. And it's only a glimpse of it. When you talk about the 135 people that have been charged by this task force, look at the impact they have on our community and the drugs they're pushing out here during the troubled times we're in now with COVID-19 and all those things. So we want to commend Commander McIntyre for sure, and each of his investigators we could have here today, and we could line them up on the walls and tell you what a tremendous job they do. But these are undercover officers that go in and make buys and do those things, and we certainly want to protect them. So thank you to the public who helps participate and gives us these tips. But more importantly, thank you for supporting it as community members. This is very impactful for us. It's very good for every agency, as well as the Solicitor's Office. We're proud to have the Solicitor back this with us to help start this program. Again, this is, it takes a lot of hands. It has a lot of moving parts. And Commander McIntyre does a great job of briefing us, and we certainly are here to support him in his efforts as he continues to make Greenville a safer place. So thank you again for being here, and we'll turn it over to Chief Hamby, I think, is next.
Thank you, Solicitor. Thank you, Sheriff. I wanted to share a few numbers with you to help you understand why we are here today and why we created this task force. The last available public report from DHEC, I'm going to share some of the numbers from there. Just in Greenville County, 332,000 prescriptions were released in 1 year for opioid prescriptions. And that's prescriptions, so each prescription could have dozens of doses within each. Greenville County had 172 deaths by overdose in 2018. Now go back in 2012, those numbers have literally doubled. We've had double the amount of fentanyl overdoses, double the amount of opioid overdoses from 2012. So each year we've watched statewide those numbers go from the 500s all the way up to the 1100s. So we see a trending problem that had to be addressed. Right here in Greenville County, 730 hospitalizations occurred due to opioid overdoses. 35 children were born identified as with neonatal abstinence syndrome. So they were already addicted to drugs and were experiencing withdrawal when they were born. 131 of those deaths in Greenville County were opioid overdoses, 101 specifically fentanyl. Fentanyl is an extremely dangerous substance. Very, very small amounts can literally kill someone. And we're starting to see that out there in some of the drug dosages that we are recovering out on the street. And Commander McIntyre will talk more about the pill press operations and that type of thing. So these numbers, I think, should help anybody understand the reason for this, for all the municipalities and the Sheriff's Office and the Solicitor's Office to work together to create this unit. But what is amazing is just 15 months ago, just a very short time ago, we were literally just having the conversation about creating the task force. So much ground has been covered in 15 months. We have literally come to an agreement. We all rallied the support of our councils and our cities and the county, and we all came up with the same idea that this was an absolute necessity for us to take on. So the amount of work that has been done in 15 short months is astonishing to me. We had no workspace. We had to figure that out, all the logistics. We had to get personnel. We had to get organized. We had to hire a commander. And so I will talk a little bit about our commander, Bart McIntyre. He's actually employed by the Solicitor's Office as part of our agreement. But we absolutely got the right guy to lead this team. He came with a whole lot of experience, not only in the drug trafficking investigation world with his prior career, but he also had experience with running task forces all over the United States. So the successes that we've had that we'll show you here today is literally from his leadership, but also the expertise from all the members on the task force that have come together. So with that, I will turn it over to Commander McIntyre.
Thank you, Chief, Sheriff, Solicitor. Good morning. Well, I appreciate all the accolades. As you just heard, we're a unit of about 35 officers and civilian employees there. The sacrifices those guys make and gals make on a daily basis is astronomical. I mean, we don't work 8-hour days. I wish we could work 8-hour days. We're probably putting in each investigator 50 to 60 hours a week to attack this problem. Along with that, their families sacrifice a lot of time and efforts. So, I appreciate all the accolades. I'm not standing on a box couldn't do it without the men and women who stand behind me and their families that stand behind them. I think that's one of the most important things we have to recognize, is we're dedicated to attack the problem. You heard Chief Hamby talk about the problem regarding the opioid death situation. One of the things that we started looking at when I first came in is we have to develop strategies and tactics to be able to address some of the problems. So what are the problems that we think that we have in Greenville County that need addressing? The very first one we found was the opioid problem. Opioid problem and distribution comes in different forms. One of the biggest areas that we found of causing destruction within the community were pill press operations. Within the last 10 months, 11 months, we have, as a unit, have taken off 10 different types of presses. The majority of those are pill presses, but you also get in some kilo-type presses and other type presses that are used in the drug environment. The ability to use these pill presses, they're unregulated, the binding agents that are unregulated, these things can pump out hundreds to tens of thousands of tablets easily within an hour. It doesn't take a lot of time. The problem that you see and why we think we're experiencing a lot of the overdose situations, when these gentlemen start mixing these type chemicals, they could care less what the potency level is in those tablets that they're making. So they're making with methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, binding agents, and whatever else comes to mind that they're mixing to them. So when you get that, users sometimes think they're buying something that they're not really getting. They may sit there and think they're buying a tablet of MDMA, which is ecstasy. They're actually getting a full dose of fentanyl. So a lot of these areas surrounding the pill presses we believe are contributing to the overdose deaths, and so we take these things very, very seriously. The other thing we found with pill press operations, other than the very northern end of the county up in the mountains, we found pill press operations in every area of the county. They're not in any particular location of the county. So that's one of the beauties of the task force there. When you sit there, as I've always said, you know, we come together as a team, and as a team, you know, everyone achieves more. We're able to address the problem more as a unit. We're able to force multiply as a unit, and I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these cases being made. But we don't just stop at pill presses when we're addressing the opioid problem. We also realize we have heroin and fentanyl dealers that are dealing strictly in those powders and aren't doing fentanyl-type tablets through a pill press. We take that very seriously also. Within the last year, we have taken off several major heroin suppliers. You don't always see that out in the news because there's a lot of things we do behind the scenes there that, you know, we just can't release at the time. But we're addressing those problems, and we've seized kilos of heroin that are coming into this market. It's an everyday occurrence. The other thing that we did to address the heroin opioid overdose situation and distribution there is within the unit we've dedicated certain investigators that will work with, like the Greenville County Sheriff's Office Criminal Investigative Division, the other investigative divisions of the municipalities on overdose deaths. If we're requested or if they need support, we will come in and send these dedicated officers there to actually work the drug angle of where do these type people get this narcotics and see if we can identify the source. We've had some success in identifying a couple of those dealers and actually taking out some of those dealers. But, you know, it's a hard issue when you deal with. You would think that somebody that overdosed on a drug would really want to cooperate with law enforcement and tell you, hey, yeah, this person about killed me. But we don't find that with these victims that are overdosing. Very rarely do we get cooperation out of them. So we have to use other investigative techniques and methods to try to identify these dealers who are selling this poison out there killing our citizens. One of the other areas that we also found that was an issue with us, it's the marijuana issue and the THC infused product issues. At first glance, people go, why is that a big deal? Well, here's the problem that I have that makes it a big deal. We are now seeing so much of these products come in. We're seeing hundreds and hundreds of pounds of this on a weekly basis coming in. And these things are marketed and imprinted just like kids' candy. Everybody's seen gummy bears or kids. If you got children that probably use gummy bears. We're seeing the same packaging of those gummy bears that you walk into a store and purchase. They're marked just like that in their THC-infused products. We also see what they call Nerds Ropes, Sour Patch Kids. You name the type of candy that you can go buy in a store, we're almost seeing that same packaging in these THC-infused products. Why is that an issue? There again, THC, the potency levels, as marijuana growers have gotten better, THC levels and potency have gotten better. So they never know what the potency levels are that they're infusing these products with, nor do they care. And in several locations we hit, we've actually seen small children there in this candy THC-infused candy is sitting out on tables out there in front of them. So that's a big issue to us. We know in fighting that battle, the amount of money generated in there within the marijuana trafficking environment is causing a lot of the other crime and some of the violence that comes associated with that because of the money being made within the marijuana industry. So we do take that as seriously also. The third area we decided to concentrate on and really put our resources behind, DU as a team, is the methamphetamine issue. We did catch a little bit of a break when COVID came along on methamphetamine distribution, and that with the borders being shut down, we did see a little bit of a decrease in methamphetamine there. But the Mexican cartels are still very strong in this market from Atlanta into Greenville, and they use every advantage they can to move methamphetamine into this county. So we have been working with our partners, SLED, DEA, HSI. There again, they're part of this team. We couldn't operate without them, and we've really been trying to address these issues, and we've taken a lot of the methamphetamine dealers off. So with that, those are our three strategies of where we're going to concentrate our importance on. It doesn't mean we don't go after other type drugs and narcotics, but those are the three ways we do it. The other thing that when we first started this that I mentioned back in August of 2019, we do not operate with boundaries. We don't operate with boundaries within this state, and we don't operate with boundaries outside this state. We attack drug traffickers wherever they go and wherever the source of supply is. We have been and ran investigations that have touched Texas, Los Angeles, Alabama, North Carolina, a lot of places outside of this area. But we're attacking the sources that are sitting there causing the distribution to be brought in by the traffickers and the homegrown criminals here in Greenville County. So I thank the citizens of the county. I thank them for their support. I would be naive to tell you we don't have a whole lot more work to do. We have a lot of work to do within the law enforcement community. There again, DEU is an important component of that law enforcement community and addressing drug trafficking, but we're not alone. I mean, every agency up here also has uniform patrol. They have directed patrol units. They have gang units. All those units cooperate with us, and there again, we're force multiplying, bringing as much, firepower, in a lack of words, to the drug issue here in Greenville County. But every one of us up here realizes we have a whole lot more work to do, and we need the citizen involvement to help us do that. So thanks again to the citizens and all the members of the board up here that stand behind the drug enforcement unit.
Be happy to take any questions for Commander McIntyre, the sheriff, or myself, or any of the chiefs.
I have one for you. You said that prosecuting drug trafficking is very difficult. Can you explain that?
Well, it's got its unique issues. Number one, we have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they possessed or distributing with intent to distribute. But this unit has made it much more easy for us to take on mid-level or high-level drug trafficker investigators because it requires substantial investigation. And I didn't mean more difficult to prosecute than any other case. What I meant was that the drug trafficking constantly causes other crimes to be committed. We have about 16,000 warrants that come into Greenville County every single year. The heads of these agencies, all their officers are making those charges every single day. Over 80% of those warrants have some nexus to drug trafficking. So drug trafficking breeds the majority of other crimes that we prosecute in this county. For example, drug dealers like to engage in violent behavior with other drug dealers for a variety of reasons, typically over money or territory. Individuals who want to buy drugs need money to buy drugs, and so sometimes they do bad things to obtain money to buy drugs. And then people that are on drugs do things they wouldn't normally do because they are on drugs, and so they commit acts of violence or other crimes. And so all that feeds back into the solicitor's office, all of those cases that are emanating from these drugs that are being pushed out onto our streets every single day. And so it's safe to say that a lot of crime in our communities start here with these drugs. And that's what this task force is designed to do, is to go and root out these guys that are pushing this poison into our communities, and therefore everybody wins. Violent crime goes down, other crimes go down, and of course drug trafficking goes down as well.
For anyone who would want to address this, there's a lot of, there's a big attitude among marijuana, it's not that bad, or the idea of a gateway drug is put off since marijuana isn't as addictive or addictive as other drugs might be. How do you respond to people who think, oh, these low-level things, this isn't worth their time or energy? How do you rebut that argument?
Well, I would rebut it two ways. One, I think you need to look at what level do we sit there if somebody wants to determine it's a legalized product or not. That's up to the legislative body. But the question becomes, when you have an open-air market of marijuana products and marijuana-infused products, such as THC vape kits. If everyone remembers, it wasn't 8 months ago. I think we had the community up in alarm because of Juul being used within the high schools, and it was rampant, and it was causing all these issues within the schools and the kids, right? We have as much THC vape products out there than Juul has in probably the market here also. So those type things start occurring. I don't think anybody really understands and has the medical knowledge because it hasn't been proven when you look at THC vape kits, THC-infused products. What are the health consequences that will occur with that? There's a lot of studies on, marijuana as a leaf product and what happens when you smoke it, but there isn't a lot of studies out there that I'm aware of because they're just starting because these are new products and all. The other thing, when you look at that market and all that, it's alarming. If you look at one of these pictures up here, these are people that have gone out and buy like Starburst candy at a legal market, go in the Sam's Club, buy bunches of Starburst candy, take it back, extract THC liquid and soak that Starburst candy in liquid. I take offense to that, both as a parent and both as a citizen of this county and state, in that I don't want candy being in any market that kids can get confused. Halloween's right around the corner. It scares me to death when you start thinking about how evil people are out there, and we all recognize when Halloween comes around, you start seeing things of parents be careful about pens and things and all in Halloween candy. Parent will never know whether they got a THC gummy that's infused with marijuana or not. So I think there's a lot of work to be looked at around that issue. I don't think it's just an issue as simple as, hey, marijuana is harmful or not harmful. I think there's issues with leaf product versus THC product, and I think there's a lot of studies and people that need to talk about that. But I think you understand where my alarm and concern is.
I know you mentioned the Mexican drug cartel. Is that part of the goal for year 2 to maybe take on them a little bit harder?
I wouldn't say take them on a little bit harder because I don't know how we can get any more harder than what we did this past year. I mean, we're going to continue the pressure and keep the gas pressed down to the floorboard on Mexican cartels and involvement of methamphetamine. But we were very successful in taking out different aspects of cartel fingers. Being a local agency, we have to rely on our partners to actually maybe step up and take out the head of the snakes down in the Texas and the Mexico border side of the house. So, I'm not going to say, we need to put more emphasis on it. We need to keep the foot on the gas. We need to keep going forward and keep driving that machine forward and continue to cause as much disruption within the cartel groups that are bringing it in here as we can. We know a lot of those groups are based out of Atlanta, Georgia. We're working with, as I said, we have no boundaries. We're working with the agencies there on what can be done and how can we better work together within those arenas to attack that issue. Yes.
What's a reasonable goal for the drug enforcement unit? Because there's always going to be bad things in the world. So what is that target that you're shooting for?
That question has been asked for probably almost 100 years when the first narcotic unit ever got addressing drugs. And I think it's a hard way to say, hey, a goal is this. I think the goal is within the law enforcement community to do the job the best you can, realizing that every single time that I can take a heroin dealer off, 0.2 of a gram of heroin, fentanyl, or a drug is usually a user amount of drug. So you look at the issues that and the amount of drugs we took off in the past year, and that's at least 135,000, minimum, 135,000 times somebody couldn't use a heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine type drug. So to me, that's the goal, is to keep working with the foot on the gas to minimize these things. I mean, we in law enforcement can never be naive, nor can I don't think the citizens expect us to be naive to think that we're going to flip a magical switch tomorrow and solve all the drug problems. But I do think we keep coming to the table through education, through training, through enforcement, in trying to get the message out there, because every time we can get at least one person not to go into this arena, that's one life saved in all that. And there again, when you look at these pictures in the understanding, I kind of laughed to myself this morning. I was driving into work, and I'm old. I'm going to show my age here in a minute. But the Leonard Skinner song, That Smell, came on. If you ever listen to that song, it's a wonderful song that tells you exactly what's going to happen if you go into this arena. And it talks about the smell of death surrounding drug users. And I've found that people that get into this, the smell of death surrounds them. You can tell it by the look on them, their faces, their complexions, everything changes about them. And so our goal is to try to minimize that the best we can within the enforcement arena.
I'm curious, you guys received thousands of dollars from this operation last year. Will that money help fund this unit, or will it help fund another part in the county?
Yeah, so asset forfeiture is a hot topic in South Carolina right now. There were actually subcommittee hearings down in the legislature discussing our asset forfeiture laws. But currently, the asset forfeiture law allows us to seize money that are related to drug trafficking. That money then goes back to law enforcement as well to help fund the DU. And that money specifically has been key to helping this unit maintain its operations. As a result of those, we're able to have an analyst added to with the help of the Greenville County County Council, an analyst, and other employees, so that they can continue this fight. They need the resources to be able to go out there and take on drug dealers. So if that requires $10,000 to buy half a pound of methamphetamine, then they need $10,000 to go buy half a pound of methamphetamine so that they can make the case that we can prosecute. They need cars, they need guns, they need bulletproof vests. They need a lot of investigative equipment that is quite expensive. A lot of that includes software, which requires yearly costs as well. So it's expensive to keep up with the ever-changing processes of drug dealers. And so the money that is seized goes back into the drug enforcement unit, along with taxpayer money from city councils and county councils as well, to help keep these guys in operation.
Do you have a dollar amount?
Of how much we forfeited, or how much?
How much you guys were able to seize over the past year?
Oh, you bounce that one back to me.
He's got the specific number.
I don't have it in at accurate total. I can give you a range that I'm going to be close. It's between $600,000 and $700,000 of funds that we as DEA have taken and seized as part of a state forfeiture. And then I think working with our other partners such as DEA, HSS, I mean, a lot of the cases that we worked with them that we may even start, they take that prosecution and they take those seizures. And that's probably about another 300 or so thousand. So we're basically at $1 million last year, which I think is very significant in the scheme of that's $1 million of people who can invest to commit more crime and all that. And I think Solicitor Wilkins was right on point. It takes a lot of money and resources to run drug investigations at mid to high level traffickers. That $1 million is a drop in the bucket within the drug environment in Greenville County. I mean, I'd hate to see how much money rolls over on any given week within this county from drug distribution. So,
And be clear, $1 million in the county or total in the state?
we have, DU has seized and worked with agencies here where it's about $1 million has been seized through some aspect of either federal or state proceedings.
Can you explain oversight structure over the DEU and accountability?
You want to do it? Yeah.
Yeah. So the DEU is structured, was based off a drug enforcement unit operation that has been running in Rock Hill for the past 15, 20 years. And so it consists of a board of directors, and the board of directors is the head of each agency. So each chief of police in Greenville County and the sheriff, as well as myself, the solicitor, sit on a board. We meet monthly to discuss DEU operations, and then we went through an extensive interview process and hired a commander, Commander Bart McIntyre. So he is the boss of the DEU. His paycheck comes through the solicitor's office, which was helped funded by Greenville County. So, and the reason of that is that he oversees sheriff's deputies, Greer City Police Department, Fountain Inn, Simpsonville, Malden, And so having him as a solicitor's office employee, we were able to work through previous issues of working together. Sometimes sheriff's office deputies didn't want to work with these deputies, and these these deputies didn't want to work with these. And so we took away sort of the territorial borders and sort of consciousness that was previously in Greenville County and got rid of it. And so now Bart McIntyre runs the DEU, and he reports directly to all of us. So we are his boss, and he is overseeing. The oversight comes directly from all of us. And then he oversees the unit. And then each individual officer works for their specific chief or sheriff. So the oversight is Bart, the commander, who then reports to us on a monthly basis to the entire board, who oversees every aspect of the entire operation. Does that make sense? So if you want to ask, like, financials, okay, so there are bank accounts that they control. So forfeiture money has to go into a bank account. So it does go into, and there's a number of different bank accounts that is overseen by the board with monthly reports as well as my office.
So if there's like a complaint about the DEU officer, does it go to the police department they work for, or does it go to you?
So we have what's called a memorandum of understanding, so an MOU. And so the MOU is what joins the entire police force together. The sheriff, by buying into this collaboration idea, gives, through his authority, jurisdiction to everybody in the DEU. So if you're a municipal city officer in a particular city, you have jurisdiction under the DEU for the entire county, because the sheriff vests you with that jurisdiction around. If a complaint comes in, it depends. The answer is it depends on the situation. But their agency head would then deal with that particular complaint.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is I'm not aware of any complaints the DEU's received since we've been operating. So we haven't had to address that issue. As the solicitor did state, if a complaint does come in, we would work as a commander with the chiefs, the sheriffs, and get that to the appropriate department, and then their internal affairs investigation. We'd follow up on that investigation of their officers' conduct. But I'm not aware of any complaints we've had since we've been in operation.
Chief, you want to address that? You can address that as well.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. Just as an example, that fictional scenario, if a Greer task force member, a Greer officer who's been assigned on as a task force member, if we receive a complaint, or let's just say it gets forwarded to Commander McIntyre, being that person is a full-time employee of Greer Police Department, we will handle that internally as far as the investigation of the complaint. Each individual agency we all have our own disciplinary process, and they're all very, very similar, I'm sure, but they might all be unique in some sort of way. So we will follow up on that. Their employment status still falls under the agency that they're employed by. So even though they're assigned full-time to the task force, they are ultimately paid and supported and provided by each individual agency. So a member of the task force who works for Greer Police, for example, over the course of their career, could get promoted. They're no longer on the task force. They're going to be back at Greer PD, assuming a new job, but we will assign another person to take their place on the task force. So they ultimately answer to each individual agency.
One last question. Obviously, this is a community issue, and you mentioned earlier that even though people have been on the brink of death after taking such drugs, they still kind of get back into that lifestyle. What would you say to people, maybe to encourage them, don't do drugs?
I could say a lot of things, and if I could ever come up with the right slogan that worked, I'd be basically the next Bill Gates as a billionaire, I believe. But I don't know the answer to that other than, people have to realize they're dealing with a poison of death when they start mixing fentanyl, heroin, methamphetamine, and these powder drugs, not knowing what they're taking, not knowing the potency levels, not knowing if even what they're buying is actually what they're buying. Let's face it, people who are in this business, they don't care about humanity in life. I mean, someone who's selling blue pills, as they're called, He could care less who the next person is at OD. They have one thing and one thing only, and their color is green, and green is money, and that's all they care about. The rest of humanity and life is nothing to them. And I think as a user, you have to recognize that you're a nothing to a dealer who's doing it. He's just using you to pad his own pockets for the color of green, and eventually you're going to be replaced by somebody else because you're dead.
Any other questions?
We don't have no more questions. We're good to go. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank y'all so much.
Will you just spell your last